Yeah.
And by the way, you're reflecting the top part of the letters. So it's the top part of the letters is what you're reflecting, not the bottom.
Yeah, and it's not in the center.
Yes, you're doing it horizontally.
Yeah, it's horizontally.
And you're reflecting the top down.
Exactly.
Okay.
So rearrange a little bit, given some spaces. It should say I1, IX, he, greater than, less than, die, which the image suggests the date, which is 11/9 or November 9th, 1966, that Paul died, and the diamond in between the words he and die points directly at Paul. So obviously that is a sign that Paul died on November 9th.
Actually, it's not a greater than, less than symbol. Now that I look at the image, I realize we're ding-dongs. It's just a diamond.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
And actually, it doesn't say he die. It says 11E or IIE.
No, that's just a bad image.
Is that what it is? So actually, there's a little cross piece there.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the internet. Of course, it's low res.
Yeah.
There was a model of an Aston Martin, which was the type of car that Paul was supposedly driving at the time of his fatal accident, leaned against a doll's leg in the picture. And the interior of this car is apparently red, which symbolizes Paul's bloody accident. There's a grandmother figure that a doll is laying on, and there's something that looks much like a bloody, stained driving glove sitting there with that. There's a Japanese stone figure on the other side in front of the wax images of these younger beetles, and it's got a lion on its head, which obviously represents the head wound that Paul sustained in his fatal accident, or decapitation. I don't really know. Mm-hmm. There's a four-armed Indian doll in the very front center. Two of the doll's arms are raised, pointing directly at new Paul, old Paul, which apparently signifies something. The television set on the ground to the right of the beetles is turned off, suggesting that the news of the tragedy had been suppressed.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then in the photo on the sleeve of Paul's uniform is a patch that says OPD, which is obviously stands for officially pronounced dead.
Of course.
Right. So you guys want to go back and talk about some of these?
Yeah.
All right.
So I actually looked up, I actually was able to find some behind the scenes pictures of this photo shoot, which were actually really, really interesting.
Oh, from the different angles and different takes.
And just people, it was actually like people painting the figures that are standing behind them and getting them all set up, and then the Beatles in different poses, and the Beatles kind of just hanging out. And so that was really interesting and also very enlightening. So let's talk a little bit about what that informed me of for this stuff. The idea that there's a hand over Paul's head as though he were being blessed, that's a waving figure. He just happens to be standing in front of.
A picture of somebody who's...
There's another photo that, just as well could have been the album cover, and John Lennon was standing under it. So does that mean that was also a sign that John Lennon was going to be assassinated?
In 1980?
Was it predictive? Oh my God.
No, no problem. Okay.
The bass guitar also looks exactly like a P, so maybe it actually stands for Paul. Or even if you squint really hard, it could even spell out Paul. Either way.
Stand for Pepper, as in Sergeant Pepper.
I think it's silly, just in general.
That it's the bass guitar?
Yeah.
I've actually seen some pretty funny images of this where people have also inserted other things so that I think it's something about, I can't remember what part of it, but it says lies in the main text of Sgt. Pepper. But the funny thing is that if you look at the original and then you look at this one that shows that it says lies, it's so friggin' photoshopped.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem.
And then I say that, because we find so many of them. And some of them it becomes an avalanche of silliness.
Well, and the thing to also remember is that this was created on a soundstage, basically. Like, all of the flowers were actually arranged. Everything was actually arranged, and they were actually in the space. It's not like a modern photo shoot where things are then photoshopped on top or even altered afterwards. And so, when we start talking about, well, it looks like there's only 3 sticks instead of 4, it's a bad camera angle. There's 4 sticks on there. Calm down.
I know.
Next, the I1IX he die.
Yeah, that's very similar to the backwards recordings.
Yeah.
That's interpretation.
I don't really see it.
I do. I see it, but it's it's one of those things that you're grasping
Yeah.
for things. It's very convenient that it's the Roman numeral I for the first thing, and then spelled out ONE for the second, with an X followed after it to make 11. Why can't it be 1110?
Well, here's the other thing.
Such a stretch.
And here's the really big thing is that you may or may not be forgetting that the Beatles were British, and they date things day, month, year, not month, day, year. So if they were going to insert something, why in the world would they do it in the American style of 11-9 instead of 9-11?
Duh! Because we're the only ones smart enough to figure it out!
Obviously, you're right.
Well, yeah, probably the person who photoshopped this was an American, right?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, note the difference in fonts between the E and he and the E and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a reverse 3. What's
Very
going on with
convenient.
that? Yeah, what is going on with that?
Yeah.
Is that reverse 3? Does that symbolize the remaining live Beatles?
Okay, so the Aston Martin thing, to be 100% honest, I don't see any car model in the image.
It's very small.
It's really small, but furthermore, the car that crashed that Paul owned that night was actually a Mini Cooper, not an Aston Martin. So.
Oh, no wonder he died.
Yeah. That does look like there's a bloody glove being worn by the grandmother figure. I'll give you that. But it looks like a glove. It doesn't have to be a driving glove. It just looks like a white glove.
And there are such things as red gloves, right?
Yeah, well, it's not. It looks like it's blood-stained white.
It does?
Yeah, it's not just all red. The Japanese stone figure is one that I've seen a lot of, and they always look like that. So I don't think that's crazy. Also, he was decapitated, not conked on the head. So, why didn't it just not have a head?
That would have made more sense. Yeah.
That's a good point.
The Shiva doll is, yes, okay. The Shiva doll is pointing at Paul and Paul. Fair. Again.
She's also pointing at everybody else.
Oh, no.
Shiva's got 6 arms. She's pointing in 6 different directions.
It's 4 down and 2 up. The only 2 up are pointing at Paul and Fall. However, Shiva's often depicted like that. So and it's one of those Koopy dolls kind of. So the arms only go in so many directions.
Got it.
Yeah, and that
It's
Paul was, Paul probably thought of himself as, kind of being in charge of the whole thing. So
Yeah.
he probably insisted on, being the center of attention.
A little, maybe
Yeah.
it's possible.
Could have been.
he was the voice.
He was.
It was. He's still alive. Doesn't matter. The television
He was.
set, the television set being off doesn't bother me at all because why would the television set be on for this? That's
Have you
silly.
ever tried to photograph a television?
It's dumb.
It doesn't
Also,
work
then
out
you
that
need
well, yeah.
then also you need a power cord.
Oh, good point. Maybe somebody forgot the power cord.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And then the patch that's on Paul's sleeve, you can see in a lot of other places and also in these other photos that I saw, it's actually an Ontario Provincial Police badge, which you can see in other photo shoots, and you can look up pictures of, and it looks exactly the same. So calm down.
So it is that.
Calm down.
Sweet.
Well, why did they go with Ontario Provincial Police?
I don't know. It was colorful.
Because it says OPD?
Oh, it doesn't. It says OPP.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, you
It says
know
OPP?
me.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I never expected to cross the Beatles with that.
Next up, we're going to talk about the rest of this cover because it's one of the biggest clues. Apparently,
we're still on Sgt. Pepper?
Kind of. So Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band album was kind of a new thing. They included a sleeve that included lyrics and things like that in the album, and that wasn't a thing that they were really doing before then.
No, it became kind of the standard operating procedure.
did.
Yeah, they kind of set the standard. So on the sleeve, there are a lot of clues too. You guys ready to talk about those?
Please.
Okay. So on the picture, behind all of the lyrics and track listings, Paul has his back turned to the camera, but the other 3 are facing front.
And by the way, it's more of a close-up of the band only. The background, the painted background and all the flowers and stuff isn't there.
It's not there anymore, yeah. It's just the band members. And then he has black buttons on the back of his coat, which apparently represent the mourning of the other Beatles. There's 3 of them. 3 of the Beatles and also 3 of the buttons, if that wasn't clear. all of them, except for Ringo, so John, Paul, and George, were all about the same height. At least they were when they first started recording. And let's just go ahead and start that off by saying they started recording when they were in their like early 20s, and men typically grow until they're in their like mid to late 20s. They keep growing for a while after that, and they started earlier than that.
Yeah, they started like in their teens. Mm-hmm. So,
and we'll talk about some dates a little bit, but so apparently it's very mysterious that suddenly Paul is taller than the other two.
Like he's ascending.
To heaven.
Mm-hmm. Next to Paul's head are the words "without you" from the song title "Within You, Without You," which is like my favorite Beatles song. Also, George appears to be pointing at the words "Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins," which is, you know, when Paul died.
In his car accident. The title song, Sergeant
Pepper's
Lonely Hearts Club.
You. It's
your story, and I know it better.
It's very hot in here. That song introduces one Billy Shears, who tells the audience in with a little help from my friends, quote, "Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key." Paul's replacement, William Campbell, was often called Billy Shears, and apparently, you know, he was still working on perfecting his singing voice to sound like Paul. So, you know, he kind of is still adjusting to that, apparently.
Because the Beatles didn't put out an album for 3 years?
Yeah. Duh.
According to this?
Duh.
Well,
okay.
There wasn't really that gap, was there? I'm not up on my Beatles.
No, there's not actually.
There's not actually a 3-year gap. I'm being sarcastic.
I didn't think so, yeah.
In the story that we told earlier about Paul picking up the woman, apparently her name was Rita, right?
Lovely Rita.
Well, and there's a song called Lovely Rita. It has a lyric that says, "I took her home and nearly made it." So that's, you know, a song.
I nearly made it.
Yeah. And then towards the end of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band Reprise, you can hear a voice shouting, "Paul is dead. Yeah, really, really dead."
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's back up and talk about some of these.
Oh, God, if we have to.
We do.
All right.
All right, okay, so yeah, Paul has back turned in that picture. Like, I don't know why, but yeah he did.
Oh, the significance of him having black buttons on his jacket.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, can I just stand on a soapbox for a second?
You always do.
I do. It never ceases to amaze me at all of these crazy little references that people find in things. You know, oh, well, in this culture, a walrus means that to Vikings. And it's like, oh, wow, so you're saying that instead of focusing on making music and chasing women and drinking and having a good time, the Beatles were sitting in a library going through tomes and tomes of cultural information to try and find references that they could plant in everything. Like
weird, obscure references.
Right, they're so random and out there.
I think that they really had better things to do with their time. But I also think that probably what happened is on that particular day, Paul probably just had a really huge zip. And so that's why he turned around.
It developed in the photo shoot.
Yeah, it did. He was just stressed out. Mm-hmm. Or there's just a million reasons he could have had his back turned. So, like, I guess the subtitle for this episode should be "Calm Down." As to his height difference, it does appear that Paul probably did hit a growth spurt, and I have some height measurements. But regardless, we'll talk about the height thing a little bit later.
Oh, you saw me grab the little black book.
I saw you, and I don't like it. But the body of that human is taller than the body of the other humans, but calm down, like men grow. It's fine. As to George pointing at Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock, the day begins, he was actually making an L, because if you look at the hands of the Beatles in that image, they're actually low-key spelling love. He's got his hands in an L, and then another one has it in an O, and then one of them has his hands tucked into his pants to make a V, and then the E is... They're spelling love. It's okay. He's not pointing at anything. Also, it's not like they took the picture with the lyrics, like, in front of them, and
Yeah,
I'm
they
pretty
had
sure
no
that they
idea where
weren't
the lyrics were gonna be.
in the studio saying, "Oh, you know what? Okay, I'm going to point here, and you should arrange that so that it perfectly matches up with the time that Paul died."
I don't know. Well, I was going to say, I don't know if either of you have had to set type. I've done it digitally.
It's impossible.
But I mean, back in the day when you had to do it manually, that would have been just insanity to say these 3 words must line up here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As to the whole idea of Billy Shears, it is a little weird that they made a song that included a Paul lookalike name in it, but I also wasn't at all able to find the origin of William Campbell being called Billy Shears, so for all I know, that nickname has been given to him post-fact.
That would not be surprising.
It wouldn't be surprising to me either.
The lovely Rita thing.
Just why?
Yeah, I
Why?
don't know that really says anything at all.
I don't think it does.
You know, that's not even a clue in my book.
And then as far as the Paul is dead, really, really dead part, I don't know what that person is saying in the background. And this is, again, one of those instances where I read it and then I listened to it. And it sounded like it to me with what was meant to be said there. And also, I think I could make it into anything. I could make it into a bunch of different things. It's just kind of in the background, really muffled. So
yeah,
I think that's silly.
Yeah, I think so too.
Subtitle of this episode: That's silly.
No, it's calm down.
Calm down. That's silly.
Yeah, you're right. Next up, the Abbey Road cover.
Oh my God, that was a definitive clue.
Yeah, there's lots of definitive clues here. Definitively. We're going to do the same thing we just did, so buckle in.
Okay.
As you look at the 4 Beatles, you will see that Paul is the only one out of step, so that draws attention to Paul. Again, if you haven't seen this, go look it up. But you've seen it. It's the one of the Beatles crossing a road.
With the zebra stripes on the road.
You've seen it.
Yeah,
but if you can't remember it, go look it up, because we're going to reference it. Also, Paul happens to be barefoot in this picture. The Beatles are shown in a really specific order. John is dressed first in white, like a priest would be.
Right, you got to raise your voice higher for that.
Like a priest would be. Ringo is dressed like an undertaker in all black. Paul is quote shabby suited unquote, and he resembles a corpse, and obviously his feet are bare. And then George is in old jeans, and he's a grave digger.
Paul actually looks like a zombie in that photo.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
He is zombie Paul.
Yeah.
If you take a closer look at Paul,
does that make him a zombie beetle?
If you take a closer look at Paul, you'll see that he's holding a cigarette, also known as a coffin nail, in his right hand. And anybody who's any kind of fan of the Beatles would know that Paul was actually left-handed. So why does he have a cigarette in his right hand?
Actually, people.
Proof. Proof.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Behind George Harrison, there's a white Volkswagen, which looks like an innocent car until you look at the license plate, which is like something on the top half, and then on the bottom half, it's 28 if, which obviously means that, Paul would be 28 if he were alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a policeman and
a Bobby
and a police car on the other side, which symbolizes the police who were called to the scene of the crime of Paul's accident in 1966, but were paid off to hush up the whole affair. Let's go back.
Woo!
So, all right.
First of all, I'm just going to go ahead and say this right now. The Beatles had literally 10 minutes to get a shot for this album cover.
For the Abbey Road cover?
Literally 10 minutes.
Yeah, the police were holding up traffic.
It was super impromptu. Yeah, the police were holding up traffic. They were really anxious to wrap up production on Abbey Road, and so they said, you know what? Let's just go outside and take some pictures. That's what they did. They didn't plan anything. There was a photographer there. He took some pictures. They went back in. They picked the best one. That's what they were with. So the idea that they had time to plan all the symbolism, like as it is
fun.
Silly. Next, Paul being out of step, it turns out that almost every single one of the takes, there were only like 5. Everyone was out of step, like really out of step. This was the only one where everyone was stepping at the same time, and the fact that Paul was on the wrong foot seemed pretty trivial.
I got to tell you that I never noticed that he was on the wrong foot until I did the research.
I never did
on this.
either.
Yeah. He's the one who picked the picture, so I don't know, maybe that's a sign.
Maybe Fall is in on it.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
wait, of course
Fall
he would
was
be.
in on it.
Barefoot.
He also had, Yeah, he was barefoot. He had started out wearing sandals, but they were uncomfortable or getting in his way, so he just took them off.
Yeah, I saw him on David Letterman. He was talking about this, and he said he was wearing flip-flops because it was a hot day. And so, yeah, he just decided to kick them off.
Yeah, so he's not wearing any shoes. In terms of the clothing, all of them were wearing suits except for Harrison, who is wearing, okay, fine, maybe like shabby old jeans. I don't really know what his deal is. But the other three were wearing suits that were specifically designed for them by a designer by the name of Tommy Nutter, who I know sounds crazy, but is actually a really prominent suit designer from Britain. Not anymore. I don't remember if he's alive or not. But so this whole idea that Paul is in a shabby suit, that's silly. It's a designer suit designed specifically for him.
Is Tommy Nutter the one who invented the cookie? The Nutter butter?
Oh my god.
Oh.
So Harrison was wearing, he was wearing jeans, but it wasn't even. I mean, they're not old. He was wearing nice stuff. They were all wearing nice stuff. You're reading into it. Calm down.
Calm down, Devin.
Yeah.
Next fact, which is really fun for me, is the bit about the cigarette. So at one point they're all smoking, obviously, right? The Beatles smoked a lot.
All of Britain did.
Everybody did. But the really interesting part about this, I guess, to me at least, is that the working title for Abbey Road was actually Everest, because the sound designer that they worked with smoked.
Their engineer.
Their sound engineer, theater, old habits die hard. Their sound engineer's favorite brand of cigarettes was called Everest, and he was always smoking them. So their working title was Everest. They initially planned to continue to have that be the title and hire a private jet and go take pictures of Everest, and that was what the album was going to be. But they were running out of time, and so Paul said, you know what, screw it. We're all tired of this. Let's just go take a picture outside in 10 minutes, as discussed, and then we'll just name it after Abbey Road, and that's fine. And everyone said, okay. But I'm sure they wanted to continue to pay homage to that, at least the idea of calling it Everest in, respect to the sound engineer. So they had a cigarette, and then, okay, yeah, Paul was left-handed, but like if he had a cigarette in his left hand, no one would be able to see it.
You know what the great thing about cigarettes is? You
can
could
smoke
them with either hand.
Non-dominant hands
pretty
work just
easily.
as well.
There is no such thing as a left-hand-only cigarette.
Right,
No,
but also
absolutely.
if you are trying to get it in the shot, you're being shot from the right side. You're gonna have it on the right side.
I will also say that smokers typically don't even realize that they have a cigarette in their hand and that it's going to be included.
Yeah.
I've seen so many photos of people who years later like, oh my god, I had a cigarette. I had no idea I had a cigarette.
So those are the two options, right? Either he just forgot about it, or it was intentional, but it was an homage to the fact that they were going to call it Everest, and
Got
then
it.
that kind of fell through.
And plus, also, probably a lot of smokers actually use their less dominant hand to hold the cigarette because they're doing something else with the dominant hand.
Yeah.
I mean, like holding a drink.
Yeah.
There's lots of instances.
In regards to the bug that had the 28,
The Volkswagen bug?
Yeah. Like I said, that was only half of the license plate. And also, it actually just belonged to the people who lived in the flat next to the recording studio. So it just was there all the time. In fact, they had a big problem with theft. After Abbey Road was released, people would come and steal the license plate a lot. And then finally somebody stole the car itself, like the entire car. And it's now, I think it's in a museum in Germany or something like that.
They stole it and took it to Germany?
Yeah. No, it's actually in a museum. It's like a famous artifact now, but it wasn't intentional. And then to the police, like there were police there holding up
stopping traffic.
That's what they were doing. You can see them holding up traffic. Calm down. I'm sorry. That's the word of the day.
Are people needing calming down? I mean, I know that this was a big thing back in the late 60s, early 70s, but
Joe, people are
still a big thing
Well,
today.
so here's the big problem, actually, is that Ringo Starr recently did an interview where he mentioned something about Paul being dead. Like in 2015, mentioned something about Paul being dead.
And it started it up again.
Also, because it was Ringo Starr saying something about Paul being dead, so people thought that was pretty good authority. I didn't actually watch any of those interviews, I'll be honest with you, because I just don't think that's
But there are
relevant.
so many people who have been so attached to this. I mean, you remember Jeff in the Facebook group?
Yeah.
That guy was lobbying for this story all the time. I'm
He
glad
wrote us
we did it
messages
so
constantly.
that, so at least,
Yeah.
we satisfied it for Jeff. But
Yeah.
but he was one of many where it was like you would talk about something and it would be, oh, but then the Paul is dead thing, and then you would talk about cat food. Oh, but the Paul is dead thing, and
Yeah.
then you talk about the Chinese you had the night before. The Paul is dead thing. Like
Yeah.
people
So,
don't
anyway,
let it go.
So yeah, Jeff, hey, this one is for you.
But also, calm down.
It's a fun story. It's been around forever.
Well, there's actually a bit more here, unfortunately. I'm
Oh yeah,
sorry.
we're not done with the Abbey
No.
Road scene.
Well, we are done with the Abbey Road scene. I'm done. Your book is out, so I don't know if you're
did we talk? Oh yeah, we already
The
talked about the
police.
cops.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So there's actually a bit of an add-on theory here, and that is that actually MI5 had something to do with the selection of the replacement of Paul.
Fall.
No,
Makes
the
sense.
replacement of Paul with Fall.
The Fall.
They helped select this person, and we'll talk about who it might be in just like 1 second. But the whole reason for that is because Paul, or Fall, whichever, just pretty quickly after being replaced, gave an interview in which he admitted to having used LSD, which encouraged a lot of young people to experiment with LSD, which was actually an MI5 plot to be able to better control people in the late 60s, early 70s, because they were on LSD and hallucinogenic drugs, and they were easier to manipulate and control. So MI5 actually placed Fall there and had him admit that as Paul, and that's what happened there.
If we hadn't paid for these mics and they weren't stuck in this mounty thing on
You'd be
in front of me,
throwing them.
I would drop it on the ground right now.
I know you would.
Yeah, I know. I think that's who put this theory out there?
MI5.
MI5.
No. Okay. Yeah.
MI6 is
Yeah,
who put it out
probably.
there.
The FBI.
Yeah, MI5 and MI6 are always kind of at loggerheads.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
but you
yeah.
know who actually put it out there was MI17, because they're the devious ones.
They're the ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I got to tell you, I don't think that people being high on LSD or coming down from LSD are any easier to control.
I would agree with that. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah.
So who replaced Paul? I mean, assuming
Who
all
is
of
Fall?
these clues, yeah.
Is
who
that our
is
actual
Paul?
mystery? Is who is Fall?
I guess, kind of. I don't know. I don't really know what this mystery is. It's is Paul dead? Well, probably not. But if he is, who
According
took
to
his
Paul,
place?
he's not.
Yeah, according to Fall, he's not, you mean. So he could have been replaced, as we mentioned before, by one Mr. William Campbell, who was actually called Billy Shears. His name was William Shears Campbell. He did win a Paul lookalike contest, although I've never been able to find any pictures.
Did you find actual
definitively.
reporting on that? Because I didn't.
I didn't either, and I haven't been able to find any pictures. One would assume that if somebody won a lookalike contest, there would be pictures of that person everywhere, but
You'd
apparently
think.
not. So I guess almost that's a little suspicious, right? So
Yeah,
there's not
because
pictures of him around.
if Billy Shears disappeared, well, what does that mean?
Well, he did apparently disappear,
But
again, no official reports or anything like that. So
maybe he didn't so much disappear; it's just sort of faded into
or
obscurity.
just never exists.
yeah, maybe there's that. Yeah.
So again, I don't know if he could sing or not. It's a good question. And then the other person he could have been is this guy named Billy Shepherd. I'm not sure why it's always Billy, but it's always Billy. Billy Shepherd didn't really look a whole lot like Paul, but he was the ex-leader of Billy Pepper and the Pepper Pots, which was a band in kind of contemporary band of the Beatles, and they sounded quite a bit like the Beatles. Actually, he sounded quite a bit like Paul, at least in the early days of the Beatles, the kind of poppy, She Loves Me kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think from all the pictures I saw, he didn't really look like Paul, so he would have had undergone pretty extensive plastic surgery.
And whoever it was obviously just hated John
Yeah.
because they began to fight just incessantly.
Yeah, or he just wanted to, go solo. Wanted to just live his life as Paul, and that was it.
Yeah. I kind of think that surgery and just say, hey, unfortunately, Paul got killed, but we have this awesome replacement who's super talented.
And that would be the simplest answer, but
Yeah.
according to our conspiracy friends, that is not the way the world operates, because young girls would be throwing themselves off of bridges and buildings everywhere.
Yeah, and
if
I actually
Paul
have
was gone.
I have some pictures in this script that unfortunately our listeners can't see. But the pictures
I'm holding it up to the mic.
The pictures are kind of where I start to lose my skepticism a little bit, just looking at them. And you guys, I really encourage you all post some links to some stuff that encourages that has some side by side comparisons. I see what people see. I totally see what people see. I don't think that, old Paul looks like new Paul really that much at all. Does he look like that to you?
For the most part, does.
Well, I mean, if you look at...
I'm sorry, one of you said, no, there are differences, and the other one said, no, he looks like him.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
look at these two guys. I mean, they look similar, but...
Those are the ones that look the most similar, but there's like a lot of differences in the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And then particularly the ones on these two pages, like the chin is totally different, and that's not like a weight loss thing, it's a totally different chin shape.
I don't believe that.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay, you're going to do your photo analysis thing that you do?
Well, no, I don't have to analyze any photos other than look at them and go, okay, that photo was taken in 1963, and the other photo was taken in 1967 or 68.
That will
okay, ballpark
yeah.
ranges here, but there's a couple of things. The guys are aging. They're losing their baby fat.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have an impact on it.
And Paul was a heroin addict also, and a meth addict.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. But
LSD addict.
But they probably all got a little bit of plastic surgery here and there to fix some things they didn't like.
Do you think in the 60s that was so prevalent though? I don't think so.
I don't know.
At the level of fame that they had, I'm not going to say that they couldn't have done it. But there's some things that really make me think that it is just simply aging. And one of them is the insane schedule that the Beatles held. You guys have read the history of the Beatles, and there's this point where they spent a bunch of time in Hamburg, and they were there over the course of like 3 or 4 years. This is before the U.S. invasion. They did 1,200 live events in 3 years or 3.5 years. That's a freaking insane schedule.
They worked hard. That's how they became so popular.
And I have a feeling that a lot of these early photos that we see have two things going on. One is they're probably wearing makeup.
Yeah.
Which is going to hide the wrinkles.
Yeah.
And two, they've probably been airbrushed. Because if you guys got to remember, Photoshop wasn't around, so you had to airbrush photos so that the wrinkles went away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge thing to me, is that they had worked so hard for so long. They're going to burn out. They're going to be drinking and partying and chasing skirts and just having fun. Well, they're going to burn off that fat. They're not going to be a 22-year-old kid anymore. They're going to be a 26-year-old guy. Mm. And you see that with a lot of men where it's like, he was so baby-faced. And then suddenly he has a chin and a jawline and it's weird. And how did that happen? Like, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Sure do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The height thing. Can we talk about the height thing?
Yeah,
for a second?
I'll just say that in 1963, there was a biography that was published of Paul, and it said that he was 5'11", and then in 1967, he reported that he was 6'2".
Which is strange because Paul never looked that tall to me.
Yeah, he didn't look that tall to me either. But I mean, they started wearing lifts, like he was wearing platform shoes, but also dudes grow.
Paul was always the tallest of them. If you look, so I laughed at this because there were some articles that I came across where people were like, well, I found this live performance where they were moving around and I was trying to use that to judge the height of one or the other. Okay, you didn't need to do that. They had all kinds of stills.
Yeah.
And they're like, my favorite one is they came off the plane when they first hit the States, which means that they weren't wearing fancy shoes and stuff because they were on a plane all day. But you know who's the tallest? Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he didn't suddenly get taller than the other guys. He was always a little